Isla reached the house just before sunset, her right hand covered in a white plaster cast. She walked in quietly, carrying no drama, no complaints, just her usual soft smile. The house was already full of voices, laughter, and the smell of dinner being prepared. It was a big family gathering, the kind where everyone talked loudly and minded everyone else's business. The moment Isla entered, a few heads turned. Some of her cousins noticed the cast first. One of them raised an eyebrow and smirked. "What happened to you this time? Fell while walking." Another cousin laughed and added, "She probably tried lifting a shopping bag and broke her hand." Everyone laughed except Isla. She didn't reply. She didn't defend herself. She just placed her bag down and greeted everyone politely. The jokes didn't stop. Someone called her delicate like glass, and someone else said, "That's why girls shouldn't act brave." Even her aunt shook her head slowly and whispered, "Poor thing, so fragile." Isla stayed calm. She didn't explain how her hand broke. She didn't tell them it wasn't an accident. She didn't say anything about the truth. She just sat there, her cast resting on her lap, her expression steady and unreadable. As the evening went on, the family got louder. They talked about jobs, money, life problems, and then, like always, they turned back to Isla. One of her uncles, a loud man who loved being the center of attention, said, "Look at her, always silent, always weak. If the world goes bad, she will be the first one to cry for help." The others laughed again. Some of the women giggled. A few teenagers took pictures of her hand and made jokes about feminine strength. Isla still said nothing. She didn't tell them she'd been gone for months. Not because of vacation, but because she was off the map, somewhere no one was allowed to know. She didn't tell them that she had seen things that would make every person in that room lose sleep for weeks. She didn't say that the hand they were mocking had broken while she was saving someone's life. She didn't say that her silence wasn't weakness, it was training. But there were two people who didn't laugh. Her younger brother sat quietly in the corner, watching her, understanding her. He knew the truth because he had seen her leave in the middle of the night, wearing a uniform that didn't belong to any normal job. And her uncle, her mother's brother, stayed silent too. He didn't mock her. He didn't joke. He had seen that tattoo on her wrist once, a long time ago. He knew better than to laugh. The rest of the family didn't notice their silence. They were too busy making jokes to feel the tension in Isla's eyes. She looked peaceful, but inside, something heavy sat like a stone. Not anger, not hurt, just patience, the kind only people with experience and discipline understand. She could have ended the jokes any second. She could have shown them the truth. But she didn't. Not yet. Because people reveal their true selves when they think they're safe, when they think the person in front of them is powerless. And that night, every joke, every laugh, every word spoken about her weakness was digging a deeper hole for the people who thought they knew her. Isla wasn't quiet because she had nothing to say. She was quiet because they weren't ready to hear it. Later, when dinner was served, the mockery reached its highest point. Someone even pretended to hold their hand like hers and said, "I'm Isla, the brave warrior. I broke my hand opening a door." More laughter, more jokes, more disrespect. No one knew that the plaster wasn't just covering a fracture. It was hiding something, something none of them were prepared to see. Something that would change the entire room in seconds. But that moment wasn't here yet. For now, she let them laugh. Let them believe she was simple. Let them think she was weak. Because when people underestimate you, they hand you their pride. And she was waiting for the right moment to return it to them in silence. And when that moment came, the room wouldn't just go quiet, it would freeze. The dinner table was full now, plates and dishes everywhere. People talking over each other like always. But the jokes didn't stop. In fact, they got even worse. Almost everyone had something to say about Isla and her broken hand. They weren't just teasing anymore, they were enjoying it. The room was full of laughter, but none of it felt warm. One of her cousins, the kind who thought he was funny just because he was loud, leaned over the table and said, "Isla, how did you even break your hand? Did a spoon attack you?" The table exploded with laughter. Someone else said, "Maybe she was trying to lift a pillow, and it was too heavy. Another voice added, "She's not built for real life. She's the type who cries when Wi-Fi goes off." Isla looked at her plate, calm as ever. She didn't react, didn't smile, didn't get angry. She just listened. But there was a sharpness in her eyes that no one noticed. She wasn't hurt. She wasn't embarrassed. She was waiting. They thought she was quiet because she was weak. They had no idea she was quiet because she was trained. Her aunt tried to speak softly, pretending to sound caring while still insulting her. "You know, Isla, if you need help with anything, just ask. Not everyone is built for pressure. You're better living a simple, safe life." Isla didn't reply, but she thought to herself, "If only you knew the pressure I've lived under." Her simple life wasn't simple at all. It just looked that way because she wasn't allowed to tell the truth. Then one of the older uncles looked at her cast and said, "We live in a world full of danger, and this girl can't even protect herself from injury. Imagine her in a real crisis." The men nodded and laughed louder. They didn't know that Isla had survived real danger, not one, but many times. She stayed silent, but her brother noticed something. Isla's hand was resting on the table now, and the cast was slightly loose at the edge. He understood what was coming. He didn't stop her. He just waited, almost smiling, because he knew the jokes were about to die a very fast death. Across the room, her other uncle, the one who knew about her past, watched the same thing. He didn't laugh like the others. He had seen firsthand what she was capable of. He knew the truth, and the truth wasn't small. It wasn't weak. It wasn't delicate. It was something these people couldn't even imagine. But the rest of the family still believed they were superior. One cousin leaned back in his chair and said, "I can't believe she still hasn't explained how she broke it. Must be something embarrassing." Isla finally lifted her eyes and looked at him. Not angrily, not emotionally, just directly. And that was the first silent warning, one nobody understood. She slowly moved her injured hand away from the plate and rested it in her lap. The jokes continued, but the air had changed. She wasn't just sitting anymore. She was waiting for the exact moment. And that moment arrived when the loudest cousin, the one who always tried to prove he was manly, suddenly reached out and grabbed her cast. He said, "Come on, let me see how soft this hand really is." He shook it like it was a toy. Isla didn't scream. She didn't shout. But her eyes turned cold. Very cold. Her whole body went still. The room didn't notice they were laughing too hard. But her brother noticed. Her uncle noticed. And for the first time, her silence didn't look like weakness. It looked dangerous. She didn't react because of pain. She reacted because she had decided. The joke's end now. She placed her good hand over the cast, as if to protect it, and everyone thought she was being shy or scared. But she wasn't protecting the cast. She was preparing to remove it. That plaster wasn't there just to hold a broken bone. It was hiding something no one at that table was ready to see. Something that didn't belong in normal life. Something that would turn every laugh into fear. The room didn't know it yet, but their mockery was seconds away from becoming silence. Ice-cold silence. Some people in the room were laughing loudly, but some had gone completely quiet, and those silent ones were the ones who knew something was not right. Isla's younger brother kept watching her closely. He wasn't scared for her. He was scared for the people who were laughing at her without knowing who they were joking with. He remembered the night she left home months ago. No goodbye. No explanation. Just a silent hug and a look that said, "Don't ask questions." Later, he found out she didn't go on vacation, didn't go for a job, didn't go for anything normal. She disappeared into a world where names don't exist, where missions don't go on record, where people don't return the same. He knew that caste was not just a caste. He knew what was under it. He also knew the family had no idea how close they were to crossing a line they could never walk back from. On the other side of the table, her uncle, the only adult who didn't mock her, stayed silent too. He had once served in the military years ago, and he had seen a tattoo like hers before, once on a man he never forgot. That man wasn't a regular soldier. That man worked in places the government denied existed. The tattoo wasn't decoration. It was permission, given only to people who survived missions no one was ever allowed to talk about. And now he saw the same mark on Isla's wrist the day she returned with the plaster. He didn't say a word because he knew the tattoo said everything. But the rest of the family saw nothing. They kept talking, kept laughing, kept acting like they knew everything about life. They didn't see Isla's breathing change. They didn't notice how her eyes scanned the room, not emotionally, but like someone trained to read danger. They didn't realize she was the calmest person there because she had lived through things that would make them scream. Her cousin, the joker of the family, leaned back and said, "Why are you so serious, Isla? It's just a joke. Don't act like you're some secret agent." Everyone laughed again. Someone even made a spy sound effect. Her brother looked at him and almost smiled. Not because the joke was funny, but because the cousin had just mocked something real without knowing how real it was. Isla didn't respond. She didn't need to. She just brushed a little dust off her plaster, slowly, carefully, like she was preparing something. The movement was small, but it was controlled, too controlled for someone weak or scared. Her uncle noticed her posture. He knew that stance. It was the stance of someone who had learned to stay calm in danger, not someone who breaks down. He didn't stop her. He didn't warn the others. He just waited, because some people only learn truth the hard way. The room didn't know it, but there were now 3 different kinds of silence in the room. The silence of people who knew nothing. The silence of people who knew the truth. The silence of a woman who was about to end the game. Then something small but powerful happened. Isla looked up. Not like a shy person, not like a hurt person, but like someone who had just decided to stop hiding. Her eyes weren't filled with tears. They weren't angry. They were calm, the kind of calm that comes after seeing death and learning to talk to it. Her brother leaned back. He already knew what was coming. Her uncle straightened in his chair, watching everyone else with a look that said, "You have no idea who you're laughing at." But the others kept eating, laughing, throwing jokes across the table like children. They had no idea that their laughter was seconds away from disappearing. Isla gently placed her left hand on the edge of her plaster cast. Not to protect it, not to hide it, but to remove it. She had stayed quiet long enough. She had listened long enough. She had allowed them to show who they truly were. And now she was about to show who she really was. She didn't need revenge. She didn't need to shout. She didn't need to prove anything. She just needed to lift one piece of plaster. The jokes were still loud, but the truth was louder. And once the truth was revealed, no one in that room would ever laugh at her again. Isla sat still for a moment, her hand resting on her lap, the white plaster cast now feeling heavier than before. Not because of pain, but because of what it was hiding. The room was still full of noise, laughter, and useless conversations. No one knew they were just seconds away from a kind of silence they had never experienced in their lives. The cousin who grabbed her hand earlier was still smirking, feeling proud of himself like he had done something funny. He didn't know he had just stepped on a landmine, and it hadn't exploded yet, but it was about to. Isla slowly lifted her head, looked at him, then at the rest of the table. Her eyes weren't angry, but they were different now. Sharp, steady, the kind of eyes that belong to someone who decides what happens next. With her left hand, she slowly reached for the edge of the plaster cast. No one noticed at first. They were too busy talking over each other. But her brother did. His eyes followed her movement with a calmness that came from already knowing what was under that cast. Her uncle, the one who had seen the tattoo before, straightened in his seat. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't surprised. He was simply waiting for the room to learn a lesson the hard way. Isla pressed her thumb under the cast and began to loosen it. The plaster didn't break in one dramatic crack. It peeled, piece by piece, carefully, like she had done this before. She wasn't rushing. She wanted them to see it, not just be shocked by it. One of the aunties finally noticed and said, "Isla, what are you doing? Leave it, you'll get it infected." But Isla didn't stop. Another cousin joked, "Oh, now she wants attention. Too late, princess. The drama window is closed." He laughed. Then Isla lifted the plaster halfway, and the laughter died in his throat. Because what they saw was not skin. It was ink. Not a cute tattoo. Not a flower. Not a name. Not a symbol of fashion. It was a black, sharp, coded design burned into the inside of her wrist. A symbol that didn't belong to normal life. The room froze, not slowly, instantly. Chairs stopped moving. Mouths stopped talking. Eyes widened. Even the loudest people forgot how to breathe. The cousin who had mocked her suddenly looked confused, then scared. He tried to laugh again, but the sound didn't come out. The mark on her wrist wasn't just a tattoo. It looked like something official, something military, something secret. It had angles, numbers, symbols, the kind of mark that didn't exist on Google, didn't belong to any normal world. Isla didn't speak. She just let them look at it. The silence in the room was now so thick it felt like the walls were holding their breath. Her uncle looked around at the shocked faces and said quietly, with meaning in every word, "You might want to think before laughing at someone you don't understand." Nobody spoke. Isla finally broke the silence, calmly, not trying to impress, not trying to brag. She said, "My hand didn't break because I slipped. It broke during a mission I'm still not allowed to talk about. The only reason I came here tonight was to be with family, not to be entertained like a joke." Her voice was soft, controlled, deadly serious. The same people who said she was weak now couldn't even look her in the eyes. The cousin who grabbed her cast earlier moved his hand away, slowly, like he was touching a live wire. He looked at her, then at the tattoo, then back again. Realizing he hadn't been making jokes, he had been mocking someone who had lived a life he couldn't even survive in his imagination. Isla didn't shout. She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She didn't have to. Everything had already changed. The dinner table that was full of noise a minute ago now felt like a courtroom, and every person there had just been judged by their own behavior. Isla placed the half-removed cast on the table gently, and then she said something none of them would ever forget. "Not every wound belongs to the weak. Some belong to the people who protect the weak." The room stayed silent, not out of respect, out of shock, out of fear, out of realization, and that was only the beginning. The room stayed frozen, but the shock was still spreading like cold air across the table. No one knew what to say, and no one dared to laugh now. The tattoo on Isla's wrist wasn't just surprising. It was frightening. It didn't look like something a normal person would ever have. It looked like something you only see on people who disappear into places no one talks about. Some of the family members leaned forward, slowly, like they were trying to understand what they were looking at. Others leaned back, almost scared to be too close. The symbol was black, sharp, and precise, the kind of tattoo that wasn't made for beauty, but for identification. It looked like a mark you earned, not a design you chose. Isla didn't cover it. She didn't rush to explain. She just let them look. And that silence, it was heavier than any insult they had ever thrown at her. Finally, one of the cousins whispered, almost afraid to speak, What is that?" Isla looked at him, then at the others. Her voice stayed calm, still quiet, but now every word had weight. "It's a clearance mark, for a location that doesn't exist on paper. The kind of place where names don't matter, only results." A few people blinked, confused. She continued, "You call it a tattoo, but it's not. It's registration. It means I belong to a unit that doesn't wear uniforms in public, doesn't get medals, and doesn't get mentioned in the news." Someone at the table swallowed hard. Another tried to speak, but no words came out. Isla gently placed her injured hand on the table, fully visible. Her cast wasn't covering a weakness. It had been hiding a truth. One of the older aunts, the one who earlier called her too delicate for life, now had tears in her eyes, not because she was sad, but because she was embarrassed. Every joke she made now echoed in her mind like a slap. The same cousin who grabbed her hand earlier slowly said, "You're in the military?" Isla shook her head softly. "No, not the kind you know." Her uncle, the one who had stayed silent the whole time, finally spoke, his voice low. "She's not in the army. She's in the kind of work where if something goes wrong, there's no news report, no rescue team, no funeral." That sentence hit the room like lightning. Her brother looked proud, but he didn't smile, because he knew this wasn't something to brag about. This was a life that breaks people if they're not strong enough. And Isla had survived it. Isla continued, calm and honest. My hand didn't break because I was weak. It broke because I was pulling someone out of a locked room before the place exploded. I didn't come here to tell stories. I came to eat dinner. But some of you thought it would be funny to treat me like I'm fragile. She looked at the cousin who shook her cast, and without shouting, without anger, she said, you don't get to define strength when you've never faced danger. No one moved. No one joked. No one even breathed loudly. The same people who laughed at her 5 minutes ago were now looking at her like she was someone they never truly knew, because she was someone they never truly knew. And then Isla did something unexpected. She didn't shame them. She didn't insult them. She didn't punish them. She simply said, that tattoo isn't a secret anymore, but the missions still are. So if you still want to laugh at my hand, go ahead. Just remember, the only reason you can laugh is because people like me did things you'll never hear about. Silence again. Not the awkward kind, the fearful kind, the respectful kind. And that was when it hit everyone at the table. They hadn't just misjudged her, they had mocked a protector. The room wasn't the same anymore. The dinner wasn't the same anymore. She wasn't the same in their eyes anymore. And none of them would ever look at a quiet woman the same way again. The air in the room had changed completely. Just a few minutes ago, everyone was laughing, throwing jokes at Isla like she was the weak one in the family. But now, after the plaster was opened and the tattoo was revealed, the room felt like someone had pressed pause on life itself. That tattoo was not something normal. It was dark, sharp, and strangely clean, like it was printed into her skin, not drawn. It didn't look like something that belonged to art or fashion. It looked like something that belonged to a classified world, a world most people only hear about in rumors or movies. Some people were still staring, trying to understand what they were seeing. Others looked away, not because they didn't care, but because they were afraid of what it meant. The cousin who was making fun of her earlier looked like his brain was trying to reboot. Just moments ago he was mocking her like she was soft and harmless. Now he was sitting there, speechless, staring at a mark that didn't belong to soft at all. Isla sat with her hand calmly on the table. No anger, no drama, no shouting. She wasn't trying to impress them. She was just being real for the first time that night, and the truth was louder than any insult spoken earlier. Finally, someone from the table spoke. It was one of the teenage cousins, voice shaking a little. Isla, what is that tattoo? Where did you get it? Isla didn't rush to reply. She took a slow breath, looked around the table, and then spoke softly. This isn't a normal tattoo. It's not decoration. It's a code. You don't get it from a shop. You earn it after surviving something that doesn't officially exist. The room was silent again. Someone whispered, surviving, what? Isla looked at her hand, the hand they had mocked, and continued. This mark is used only in Blacksite operations. No names, no uniforms, no public records. If you fail, they don't bring you home. If you die, they don't write your name anywhere. If you succeed, no one ever knows. Her words were calm, but they shook the room like thunder. The aunt who had laughed earlier now looked like someone had pulled the floor from under her feet. She couldn't even look Isla in the eyes. The cousin who grabbed her cast earlier slowly moved his hand back, as if the tattoo itself was dangerous to touch. Isla's brother watched the room, almost satisfied. He had always known who she really was. They were just finding out now. Then Isla continued, my hand didn't break because I was careless. It broke when a door exploded in front of me. I didn't leave for months because I wanted to travel. I was gone because I was inside a building that doesn't even exist on a map, pulling out someone who was chained to a wall. Nobody blinked. Nobody chewed their food. Nobody even touched their glass. She looked at each of them slowly, her voice still steady. You called me fragile. You said I was too weak for pressure. But the only reason you are sitting here safe and laughing at dinner is because people like me go to places you will never see. Her words weren't angry, they were truth. And truth was heavier than any insult. Her uncle, the only one who had stayed quiet from the beginning, finally spoke, backing her in a single line. She is one of the people who walk into danger, so the rest of us don't have to. That sentence was the final nail. Everyone who had laughed at her now sat with their heads lowered, wishing they could take back every joke, every rude word, every moment they thought they understood who she was. Isla didn't enjoy their discomfort. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't looking for revenge. She simply said, "I didn't come here to impress anyone. I came here because I thought I was with family. But it seems some of you only respect people when you think they're stronger than you." Those words didn't just silence the room. They exposed it. Suddenly, every person at that table realized something. They didn't laugh because they were strong. They laughed because they thought she was weak. And now they knew the truth. She wasn't weak. She was silent because her real life was too big for their small jokes. No one spoke after that. Not because they had nothing to say, but because Isla's truth left no space for words. When the room finally settled after the tattoo on her hand was revealed, nobody knew what to say. The people who were laughing earlier now sat quietly, watching her every move. The broken hand they made fun of was no longer the focus. Instead, all eyes were on the strange, sharp black tattoo that covered the back of her hand, glowing slightly under the light. It wasn't a normal tattoo. It looked like a symbol that belonged to a place no one wanted to talk about. A place that didn't officially exist. Maria sat back in her chair, calm, almost too calm. She didn't look angry or scared. She just waited, like she knew this moment would happen one day. Her silence made everyone even more uncomfortable. The man who insulted her earlier kept looking at the door, as if he wanted to leave but couldn't move. The woman next to him tried to act normal, but her hands were shaking. They were all wondering the same thing. What kind of place gives a tattoo like that? And what kind of person survives it? One of the guests finally spoke, a little too softly. "That tattoo. What is it?" But Maria did not answer immediately. She only lifted her injured hand and looked at it, like it was a reminder of something she wanted to forget. Then, she slowly wrapped the bandage back over it. That simple action somehow felt louder than words. It said, "You saw something you were never supposed to see." The silence continued, longer, heavier. The dinner table was full of food, but nobody was eating anymore. The laughter from earlier felt like it belonged to another lifetime. Everyone now saw Maria as someone completely different. Not weak, not shy, not a simple woman. She had a past, a dangerous past. Maria finally spoke, but not in a dramatic way. Her voice was soft, controlled, almost emotionless. Some people break a hand cooking. Some break a hand somewhere else. She didn't explain more. She didn't name the place. She didn't have to. Those who understood, understood. Those who didn't were now too afraid to ask. The man who had mocked her earlier forced a laugh, trying to act brave. "Come on, it's just a tattoo. Probably fake." But even he didn't believe his own words. His eyes told the truth. He was scared. Very scared. Because he knew something was wrong. Tattoos don't make rooms go silent. Tattoos don't stop confident people from talking. But that one did. Maria didn't react to his fake confidence. She just looked at him once, and that was enough. The way she stared at him made him feel exposed. Like she knew everything about him. Like she had seen worse men than him. Like she had ended worse men than him. Another guest stood up, pretending to check their phone, pretending everything was fine. But they left quickly without saying goodbye. Soon, one by one, the others found excuses to leave. Someone said they forgot something at home. Another said they had an early morning. Within minutes, the room that was full of laughter and noise was almost empty. Only a few people stayed, the ones who were curious or too frozen to move. And Maria just sat there, quiet, calmly finishing her drink. Her broken hand rested on the table, wrapped again, hiding the tattoo that had changed everything. When almost everyone was gone, one woman, braver than the rest, took a deep breath and asked, "Why do you still hide it if you're not afraid of it?" Maria looked at her, and for the first time that night, her expression softened just a little. "Because some things are not meant to be seen," she replied. "And some stories are not meant to be told." Those words were not a warning. They were a truth. A truth she had lived. A truth she carried on her skin. A truth that cost people their lives. The woman nodded, understanding enough to stop asking questions. She stood up, thanked Maria quietly, and left the room. Maria was finally alone. She leaned back in her chair, breathing slowly. Her hand hurt not because of the break, but because of the memories it carried. The tattoo was not decoration. It was a brand. A mark from a Blacksite that never existed on paper, but existed in the worst corners of the world. A place where people disappeared. A place where silence was the only language. And even now, she was still silent. But the room would never forget. The next morning, the house was quiet. The dinner from last night felt like a dream, but Maria knew it wasn't. The way people ran out, the way their eyes changed, the way the whole mood cracked in seconds, it was all real. She had lived through worse, but every time her past surfaced, it left a mark. Maria stood in the kitchen, slowly pouring herself a cup of tea. Her broken hand was still wrapped, but the pain wasn't just physical anymore. She could feel it in her chest, the kind of pain that comes from carrying a story you can never tell. She had spent years learning how to live like a normal person. Shopping, cooking, smiling, blending in. But one moment, one symbol, one accidental reveal, and the world remembered she was not normal. Her phone vibrated on the counter. A message. "Are you okay?" It was from Claire, the only guest who stayed till the end, the only one who spoke to her with respect, not fear. Maria thought for a moment, then replied, "Yes." No more words. Claire didn't ask about the tattoo again. She didn't ask where it came from. She didn't ask what Maria had done to earn it. And that silence made Maria trust her more. But while Maria could ignore the outside voices, the past had its own way of coming back. That afternoon, someone knocked on her door. A slow, steady knock. Not the kind neighbors make. Not friendly. Not casual. It was a pattern. 3 taps. Pause. 2 taps. Pause. Her heart froze. Only one kind of person used that knock. She opened the door calmly, but carefully. A tall man stood outside, dressed in a simple coat, looking like he could disappear into any crowd. His face was plain, but his eyes sharp, trained, dangerous. The kind of man who could walk into a room and leave without leaving a single trace. Someone who knew what her tattoo meant. "Maria," he said, like he already knew she would answer. She didn't smile. "You shouldn't be here." "Neither should you," he replied. They stared at each other. 2 ghosts from the same world. 2 people with matching scars inside their minds. "You exposed it," he said. "The mark." "It was an accident," she answered. "A broken bone. Wrong moment." He nodded. "They'll start asking questions." "They already did," she said, remembering the dinner table, the fear, the whispers. "You know the rules," he said. "We don't exist. They can't know what that symbol means." "And I didn't tell them," she replied firmly. "I never do." He looked at her hand, still wrapped in cloth. "You should have never left the program." She gave a tired smile. "You think we really leave? We just learn how to breathe outside the cage." The man didn't argue. He knew she was right. People who survived Blacksites never truly escaped. Even if they were removed from duty, retired, discharged, hidden, they lived like shadows, always being watched, always watching. "There's talk," he said quietly. "Someone from the old base is missing. Someone who knows you." Maria looked at him closely. "Who?" He hesitated. "You remember the medic?" She froze. The medic. The only person who ever treated her like a human inside that nightmare place. The only one who taped her wounds gently, not like fixing a broken weapon. The only one who whispered jokes so she wouldn't forget how to laugh. If he was missing, something was wrong. "What do they want?" she asked. "They want to know if you're still useful." That word again. Useful. It wasn't a compliment. It meant dangerous. It meant disposable. It meant they still saw her as an asset, not a person. "I'm not going back," she said quietly. "You don't have to," he replied. "But they might come to you." Maria looked around her peaceful little home. The teacup. The quiet. The normal life she built piece by piece suddenly felt fragile like glass. "You came to warn me?" she asked. "No," he said. "I came to see if you're ready." Ready for what she already knew. Not for war. Not for missions. For the past. For the moment when the people who made her would try to take their creation back. The night felt heavier than usual. Maria sat alone in her living room. The lights dim, her broken hand resting on the arm of the chair. She kept replaying the visitor's words in her head. "They might come to you." She had heard warnings before, but something about this one felt different. Not like a threat, like a countdown. Her phone buzzed again. Another message. This time not from Claire. Unknown number. No name. Just 2 words. "Stay awake." Her eyes narrowed. That was not a random text. That was a code. A code from the old life. A warning from someone inside. Someone running out of time. She stood up, walked to the window, and slowly moved the curtain with her finger. The street outside looked quiet. Too quiet. No cars passing. No neighbors outside. No dogs barking. Silence always had a meaning. Silence was rarely safe. She went to her bedroom, opened the bottom drawer, and pulled out a small metal box. Inside it was a folded piece of paper, a key, and something wrapped in cloth. She unwrapped it slowly. A simple black pistol. Old but clean. Not for attack. For survival. She had promised herself she would never touch a weapon again. But promises didn't matter when the past knocked on your door with real footsteps. She was about to close the drawer when she heard it. Car engine. Not driving by. Stopping. Her heart slowed. She turned off the lights, moved silently to the hallway, and listened. Doors opening. Not one. More than one. Soft footsteps. No talking. Professionals. They weren't here to ask questions. They were here to collect. Maria didn't panic. Panic was for people who had the luxury of fear. She moved like her body remembered something it was never trained for, but built for. She knew every exit point in her house. She knew where the floor creaked. She knew how long it took for a lock to break. Then came the first sound. A whisper of metal sliding into the front door. Lock pick. She took one breath. Slow. Steady. Then she moved. Not to run. Not to hide. She stood in the middle of the room, holding nothing but the bandaged hand. No weapon in sight. No fear in her eyes. The door opened. A man stepped in. Black clothes. No face visible. Not police. Not thieves. Silent unit. The kind used to remove problems without paperwork. He froze when he saw her standing there. Not because she was dangerous in that moment, but because she was calm. Too calm. Like someone who had already calculated the ending. "You weren't supposed to show the mark," the man said, voice distorted behind a mask. Maria didn't answer. She simply removed the bandage from her hand, revealing the tattoo again. The ink caught the dim light like a scar under the skin. "This tattoo doesn't belong to you anymore," he continued. "You don't belong to us anymore. But you're still a risk." Maria gave a small, sad smile. "If I wanted to expose you, I would have done it years ago." He didn't respond. He didn't need to. Another man entered behind him. Then a third. Surrounding her like wolves around someone they thought was weak. Then suddenly, a voice came from the doorway. "She's not the risk." Everyone turned. It was the man who visited her earlier. The one in the coat. But now he wasn't silent. He wasn't calm. And he wasn't alone. 2 more figures stood behind him. Not enemies. Allies. "You made her," he said, looking at the silent unit. "You broke her. You used her. And now you're scared because she lived." Maria looked at him, stunned for the first time. He wasn't here to test her. He was here to protect her. "This house is surrounded," the masked man warned. "So is yours," he replied. Everything stopped. Nobody moved. Nobody blinked. For a moment, the air itself seemed frozen. Then, slowly, the masked leader lowered his weapon. "You disappear," he said to Maria. "For good this time. No names. No contacts. No traces. You stay silent. And we call this over." Maria looked at him, then at the man who came to help her. Her life, everything she left behind, was now being decided in a living room with no witnesses. I was already gone, she finally said. Until you came looking. No one replied. The men left. No threats. No fights. No blood. Just silence again. After they were gone, the man in the coat looked at her. You still have choices, he said softly. But not many. Maria nodded. I'll disappear. For real this time. He didn't argue. He just handed her something small. A new passport. A new name. A new life. She walked to the window and watched the street return to normal, as if nothing happened. But she knew what had changed. The world wouldn't remember her. But the people who feared her always would.